Hey guys, this is Robert Kipferl and I am back here with another edition of Kip's Tips. Okay, in today's video we're going to be going over the IRA. Now one thing I want to make clear out of the gates is there are two different types of IRAs. On one hand you got the Roth IRA, on the other hand you have the traditional IRA. I personally am in the Roth IRA and I'm going to get into this here in a second, and I do not like the traditional IRA as much just based on what my situation is and what I plan for my future. So, what is the Roth IRA? The Roth IRA is one of those tax advantage accounts that I've been talking about here in my recent videos. You got the 401k, you got the IRA, and you got the HSA. These are the three tax advantage accounts that I like to focus on. But let's focus in on the IRA today here. So with the Roth IRA, you can contribute up to $6,000 annually into your Roth IRA account, which you can open up with Charles Schwab or Fidelity, or whichever provider you want to go with to do those services for you. I personally use Charles Schwab. This isn't an advertisement for them or anything. And you can look into whoever you want to go with, Vanguard, Fidelity. Like I said, there's a lot of options out there for you. Now I'm trying to contribute my $6,000 annually into that tax advantage account because, well, what does that mean? What does that look like when I'm older? Okay, so it just like the 401k, you can't withdraw that money until you are 59 and a half. If you withdraw before 59 and a half, you will incur penalties. But if I take $6,000 annually and I put it into my Roth IRA over time, that's going to be a really nice retirement nest egg for me by the time I'm old and gray. By the time I'm 59 and a half, hopefully I'm not old and gray by that time, but you know what I'm saying. So I'm going to try to take my $6,000 annually and I'm going to try to put it in there. Now, anytime I get a paycheck, that money is just like anybody, that money is taxed. Uncle Sam takes a cut, whatever that 30, 40, feels like 1,000% might be. Now you got your money in your savings account or in your checking account or wherever you put it. And then you transfer it from there over to your Roth IRA. Now, that money, like I said, has already been taxed. So that's advantage number one of the Roth IRA. That money's pre-taxed. Pre-tax is a term you got to know. That means it's already been taxed. Therefore, when you come to withdraw it during your retirement, you don't have to pay taxes on it. So it grows tax-free, and then you can withdraw it tax-free, and it's beautiful. But if you do withdraw beforehand, then you are going to incur some penalties, so you don't want to do that. Now, there are some exceptions for early withdrawals, which you may want to consider if your situation calls for it. If all of a sudden you become disabled, that's a reason. If you're trying to purchase a home, I believe, medical expenses, there's a list there. You could check out kind of your ins and outs of how you can get that money, but to be honest with you, don't do it if you don't have to. If you can avoid doing that at all costs, in the end of the day, you're going to be better off. Because again, I'm going to circle back to that term, pound interest. It is your best friend. And if you leave that money untouched and you let it grow over the course of your life, at the end, when it's 59 and a half and you can pull that thing out, you're going to have a big nest egg. Now, any dollar you take out today, that whole nest egg is going to be a lot smaller tomorrow. So try to keep it in there if you can. If you need your outs, you always got them. There's loopholes, but... All right, so that's kind of the gist on the Roth IRA. The traditional IRA is very, very similar to the Roth IRA. Now, the big difference here is you can use either pre-tax or, you can either use pre-tax money or you can use not tax money, just like the 401k actually. So before Uncle Sam touches it, you can actually put it in to that traditional IRA and it will grow, but it won't grow tax free. So that's kind of the difference. At the end of the day, you will have to pay the taxes on that. It's still got all the same caveats as the Roth IRA in terms of the withdrawals, in terms of all that. The other thing that I'll say about it is if you're planning on being in a higher tax bracket when you're older, if you plan on having a lot of money, and hopefully you do, when you are older, then maybe the traditional IRA isn't something you want to consider, because then when you go to pull that money out at the age of 59 and a half, if you are wealthy at that time and you need to get taxed on that money as you withdraw it, you're actually going to basically lose a lot more than you would if you were in a lower tax bracket. So again, if you're in a higher tax bracket at the end of your life, you see yourself at 59, 60, being in a higher tax bracket, maybe the traditional IRA is not for you because you will get huge tax penalties due to your tax bracket. Now, you can dodge that with the Roth IRA. So, personally, I want to accumulate as much wealth as I can through my lifetime. And I also want to dodge as much taxes as I can, legally, of course. And the Roth IRA is a great way to do that because the money's already taxed and then it grows tax-free and then boom, you got it. The main thing here is that you guys are doing your own research here. Again, I'm not a financial advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. But you do want to get started on this sooner than later. Like I said in my last video with the 401k, it's a very similar situation. With the 401k, if you start at the age of 25 and you max out your contribution of $19,500 per year, by the time that you're 70, you'll have about $4.38 million by the time you're 70. But if you're 30, then you'll have about, I think it was like $3.24 million by the time you're 70, and that's a $5 million difference. So remember, in 5 years of waiting, you're more than $1 million less wealthy. So my point here is that same principle applies to the 401 for the Roth IRA and the traditional IRA. Get started sooner so your money grows for you, so it compounds for you, and so when it comes time to grab that nest egg, it's as big as it can possibly be, because that's what we want for you. So that's just some of the basic information that I think you do need to know about the Roth IRA. And just like the 401k, just like any of this. Now, I gotta stop here and I gotta say, I'm talking about all these different investments that you can do. I'm talking about all these different opportunities that you have to grow your funds over the course of your life so that you have a nice retirement. Well, if you have a lot of debts in your life, let's say you have student loans, let's say you have credit card debt, let's say that you got a big car payment and you got a mortgage. Those should be your priority. Now, car payment and a mortgage, less so, but if you got a credit card debt or you have student loans and there's interest building up on you, that's really going to hurt you over time. And I would urge you, and I would really, really urge you to try to pay off those debts before you start shuffling money aside into these retirement accounts, because those are just going to eat into all the profits that you do. It's basically like, you can think of it like reverse compound interest. If you got a bunch of debts that are incurring interest on you and you're not paying them up, and that debt is just building up over time, well, it doesn't matter how much you invest and how much you make, you're going to have these debts building up on you, and they're just going to eat away at you, and they're going to mentally break you down more so than they're going to financially break you down. But in the end, they could do both. And so what I challenge you to do is to pay off your debts as soon as possible before you dive into these retirement accounts. That being said, once you're in that position where you can start to invest, I really suggest that you take a look at these tax advantage accounts. Now, again, I'm the fan of the Roth IRA. You could certainly take a look at the traditional IRA as well. But these are the ones that 401k, the Roth IRA, the traditional IRA, and the HSA. These are the ones that I really stress to you, because in my journey, let me just tell you this. So I actually started investing where I started with Acorns. Maybe you heard of that, where it's this app that you can get and you can just start, auto saving $200 a week, $200 a month, whatever it is, into this Acorns account. And it's basically like this portfolio that takes into account what your situation is in life, how old you are, what your risk tolerance is, what your income is, and then it puts you into this basically investment basket of a mix between cash, bonds, and stocks. And basically, they pick it for you based on the survey that you fill out, which personally I don't like, but at the time I didn't really care because it was like, I'm saving money and it doesn't really matter. So I started there, and then I started to do some research, and I was like, well, okay, wait, maybe I could get better gains in stocks. So I got Robinhood, and then I was trying to get better gains in Robinhood, and I got some gains, took a little bit of losses, because stocks are risky. So then as I did more and more research, I found out that really, and there's no proven, there's no one way to do it, there's no exact right and wrong way, but a lot of people, a lot of experts based, on my research shows that you really need to hit those tax advantage accounts first because, well, the tax benefits and because the risk, you're minimizing your risk out of the gate. Now, once you get your tax advantage accounts going, and then maybe you take a look at some index funds, maybe you take a look at the S&P 500 or the triple Qs or, one of those big basket stocks, then you might want to consider taking a look at some, with smaller portions of your overall funds that you have to play with, to invest with. You might want to look at picking individual stocks. But I don't suggest at a young age that, well, in any age really, that you overdo it in the stock game. Now that's coming from a guy who's got, half his net worth in Bitcoin, and we'll get into that, at another video, which I definitely want to tell you of. But my point here is there is definitely a way that I would go, if I had that time machine again, I'd go back in time. I would have just started, instead of doing acorns, I would have just gone right to my Roth IRA. I would have gone right to my Roth IRA and I would have started maxing that out. Now I'm still working on maxing out my Roth IRA for this year. I already did last year's and I did the year before that. But I'm really trying to make it a priority for me to, over the course of each year, shuffle a couple $100 into that account, but making sure by the end of that year that I'm doing it. And you can always do, like I always say, you can always do a buy where you're buying it over time. You're doing a dollar cost average where every week you might buy it, so it doesn't matter what the price fluctuations are in the market. You're always getting a buy, and then your average cost would be, wherever that average cost is, if you take into account all your spots that you actually bought into the market. That's one strategy that works for a lot of people. Or if you feel bold enough and you've got a little more risk tolerance and you really did your research and you know what you're doing, maybe you look for the dip. Maybe you wait for the dip to put your $6,000 in one pop. Heck, if I had $6,000 in cash at the time where coronavirus hit here in the beginning, March, and our market went, I had just invested, if we had invested our $6,000, our measly $6,000, well, not measly, but into the market, we're back. You got Tesla going through the moon. You got all the stocks, the S&P hitting highs. Now we're wavering this week, and it's kind of a tough week, but you know what I'm saying. If you can pick the low point, you can buy the low point. Good for you, but don't try to beat the market. Just go for time in the market. Start soon, start today, start tomorrow, start as soon as you can. Pay off those debts first. All right, that's all I'm going to say about the Roth IRA and the traditional IRA. In tomorrow's video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the HSA, the Health Savings Account. This is one that I still haven't accessed yet. I am set on when open enrollment comes from my company and HR emails me saying, let's review your benefits, let's review your insurance, let's review your investment portfolio, like your 401k contributions and your HSA. I'm accessing it. We'll talk about it tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for tuning in to Kip's Tips, guys. I appreciate you. Feel free to leave a comment below. Feel free to subscribe to my channel. I love more and more ideas for more content in the future because we're just getting started, folks. Have a great night.